Happy video day, guys, and happy Make Up Your Mind day. So I know it feels like it's been like forever since I filmed a Make Up Your Mind, but it's only been like a week and a half. But I have to be honest with you guys, I have not been like in love with any of the eyeshadow palettes that have been releasing lately, and I feel like there was a little pause, like a little moment, a breather. I feel like there wasn't that many eyeshadow palettes being released every 5 seconds, and then it started again. So in today's Make Up Your Mind, I'm going to be trying to mimic the new Too Faced holiday palettes. I'm gonna do all 4 of them. So in this video, what I do is I search through my collection, and to the best of my ability, I try to mimic an eyeshadow palette to kind of give you an idea of what the color story is gonna look like. I kind of tell you if I think it makes sense, how similar is it to certain palettes that I already own, and yeah, we just go over all of this together. I always tell you guys to try this at home with your own palettes and see if you really need a new current release. So today's video is going to be on those Too Faced palettes. So there's 4 different palettes. I did do every single one of them, and guys, there's a few palettes that I currently own that are very similar, like almost identical. So there's 4 of them, and the first one is That's My Jam on the Fly. There's Let's Play on the Fly, Light My Fire on the Fly, and Kitty Likes to Scratch on the Fly. So those are the 4 palettes. Each one of them is retailing for $27 US, and I will have them all linked down below in case they are interesting to you. And yeah, if you're new, I'm Christina Brooke. I love to do Make Up Your Minds. I would love it if you would hit subscribe. I try to help you guys decide before you buy, before you hit that buy button. So let's go ahead and let's get into these 4 palettes. There's 4 of them. A lot to go over. Let's get into it right now. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start off with the first one. So Kitty Likes to Scratch. I'm gonna tell you guys, for this one, I also thought of a specific palette and it kept going through my head. And what I ended up doing was grabbing the Soft Glam from Anastasia and mixing it with Natasha Denona's Sunrise palette. Now, honestly, I really thought of this one on its own, but as I started trying to find the colors, I really felt like I needed Sunrise, so I had to add it in. So let me go ahead and show you guys my results so you guys can see. I do feel like I found this palette pretty easily as well. I feel like a lot of the colors really did come straight out of the ABH Soft Glam, and if you really look at this small palette, it really reminds me of Soft Glam. I don't know, for me, I was like, ooh, Soft Glam. So let's go ahead and let's get into the first color. So for the first color, what I did was I jumped right into Soft Glam, and this first color right up here on the top, like a pale cream color, if you guys can see. So when I looked at it, I was like, okay, yeah, that totally reminds me of the same color. So then if I went into the second one also, I thought of ABH Soft Glam. I jumped right into Rose Pink, which is right next door, and this is another color that looks very similar. The Too Faced one actually might have a little bit more of a pinky look, and this one might go a little bit more rose, but we're kind of in like the same theme, you know, like I feel like it's kind of close. So for the next one, what I did was I grabbed into the color Day Spring, right? That's in the Natasha Denona Sunrise. But when you lay it down, I feel like it's a little bit too deep. So I jumped into Laurel. And if you put a little bit of Laurel and you mix it with Day Spring, you start to create a color that looks so similar to the color from Too Faced. So I do feel like it's kind of close. Like it's literally mimicking the color so good that I was like, yeah, I think I got that color. And then I jumped right back into this palette right here, and I jumped into this color called Felix. So this is like almost like a reddish orangey, it's like a reddish orange, and it looks really close to what I'm seeing that they did in the new Too Faced palette. And yeah, that's like almost like the same exact color story going right now. Really love the color story, I'm not gonna lie. Very pretty color story. The next one, I just jumped into Day Spring one more time, just on its own without mixing any of the Laurel color in, and it's gonna give you that deep, beautiful, like almost like a bronzy orange look. Very similar to what I'm seeing coming from Too Faced, and the color story already is looking very similar. So then what I did was I jumped into Soft Glam and grabbed this color called Burnt Orange. I really love the color Burnt Orange in Soft Glam. I love that it's in this new Too Faced palette. I think that coloration right there is just so pretty. Really love the color story. But then again, like, I'm obsessed with Soft Glam, so I mean, makes sense, right? So for the next one, I jumped right into Soft Glam again and jumped into the color called Sultry. Now, I believe that the one in the new Too Faced palette is gonna be a little bit more brown metallic or brown with like little glitters in it or something, but it's gonna look similar to this color, so that's why I grabbed this one. So we already have a pretty close color story right there. And finally the black from Soft Glam. Just add the black to the end and bam, you basically have this palette. And I do feel like I have this palette pretty good as well, and especially looking at it. So of course guys, I'm gonna get into like the color stories at the end of the video. Right now I'm just showing you how I found them, but if you want to know like what I think of the color stories, that's coming very soon. I feel like the next one is the one that I had to pull the most palettes for. It is the one that has the most interesting colorway, or different, I guess. So that is the one that's called That's My Jam. So this is the one that has like the purples and like those type of colors. It's a little bit more vibrant, I guess. The palettes that I used was the Mini Light from Huda Beauty. I used the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice. I also jumped into Natasha Denona's Lila palette. I only had to grab one color from here, but none of the other palettes had it. And the Natasha Denona Trio Chrome. Now I feel like the Trio Chrome had a lot of the colors. The other ones I just literally had to pull in for like one tone or two. So let's start it off with the first color. I went into Natasha Denona's Trio Chrome, and if you look at this color right here down on the bottom, it's Diatonic, I think it's called. It's almost like an orangey pink. Feel like it might be in that direction. If it goes more pink, it could be one of the colors that's inside of the Mini Light, which I feel like I've got a lot of those type of pinks in here too. But I ended up narrowing it down to that one and saying, I think I'm gonna stick with this one. Then for the next one, I jumped right on top to this color called Redox, and it's kind of like a really light pastel-y purple. I haven't had like pastel-y purples in my collection until I added this palette right here. So now I feel like I have them forever because I never used that color. So then the next color was one that honestly I wanted to stay in the Trio Chrome, but because the colors down the center shift so much, I ended up adding in this one right here from Too Faced, the Pumpkin Spice, the release from this year. And I jumped into this color right here called Fall Vibes. And it's almost like a greeny gold. And I feel like that's a very similar colorway to what they're putting in this new palette. I do want to also mention that this has a very similar color idea. Even though I didn't jump into this one as much, the color idea is there. It's just the textures are not. So like where there was a metallic, it might actually have been a matte in this palette, you understand? So that's why I couldn't just use this one, but that palette has a very similar colorway. So the reason that I had to bring in Lila was only for this one color, for this metallic-y, just for this metallic-y pink color, which you guys know I love. So I had to pull this one from here because I literally try to skip every palette that has like a metallic pink in it just because I'm so over it. But that palette does have it. So that's why I really pulled Lila. And then for the next one, what I did was I jumped into Huda Beauty's Mini Light. And I jumped into this color right here, which is like almost like a metallic-y, very, very light pink. But when you swatch it, it gives you like almost like a peachy, but like pinky color. It looks really similar to what I see Too Faced did, so I feel like that's a very, very similar colorway. So then when I moved on, I really honestly just wanted to use this color right here in the center. Now you're gonna see it more blue, but when you put it on, it literally swatches more purple. So it just looks really similar, the color just looks so similar. And when I swatched around in some of my other palettes, I don't know, that's just the one that stuck out the most. Obviously, inside of the Pumpkin Spice, I also have these two purples right here. So when it comes to this color, I do feel like I have it in a few palettes. I just wanted to use the Natasha Denona one just because I really wanted to. So I ended up using that color, but literally that color, that metallic-y purple, I've got it a few times over. So for the next one, I jumped right back into this Too Faced palette, and I jumped into this color called Fall For It. And I feel like Fall For It has a very similar color. It's almost like an orangey color. I think that the new Too Faced one's gonna be even more orange than this one, but it is gonna be pretty close. So that's why I ended up grabbing that one. And then for the last color, I decided just let's stay within this Too Faced palette because there's this color called Cocoa Drizzle, which is a brown, and it's a very, very, very similar brown. So definitely I feel like this palette, I was able to find it. And like I said, for the most part, this palette right here has a very similar colorway, especially if you don't really care about it being metallic or matte. That one has a very similar colorway. Is Light My Fire. Now guys, Light My Fire is so identical to a palette I currently own. Like, wait until you guys see this. So this is the only one that I jumped into only one palette to mimic it. Like if you have this palette, Or if you have the Natasha Denona Sunset, I would say to look in that one too. But the one that I mimicked it with was this one. So this is the ColourPop Yes Please. You remember this? This is the Mimic palette of the Natasha Denona Sunset palette. And guys, it's almost like Too Faced didn't even like hide the fact that they made such a similar palette to this one. So let me go ahead and show you guys my results so you guys can see what I'm saying. So I feel like I was able to really mimic this palette. Like I did mix a few colors in order to create some of the colors, but a lot of them straight away I found in this palette without even having to mix. So definitely this is a very similar palette to this one. So let's go ahead and let's start off with the first color so I can show you guys. So for the first color, inside of the ColourPop It's My Pleasure, there's this color right here. All right, editing Christina stepping in really quick to tell you that the original color that I picked for this one, I wasn't in love with it when I was editing back, so I switched the color and I ended up picking up this peachy color inside of the Yes Please, and I feel like it's gonna look more similar to this one. It doesn't look as similar in the swatch, but just going by the colors and looking at different pictures, I feel like it might look more similar to this. So I'm gonna go with this color and I'm gonna switch out the one I picked before. Like when I was looking at this, I was like, ooh, that looks really, really close. And it's a unique shade. It's a very pretty shade. It's not something I have a lot of times over. So for the next one, this is like a lighter brown. So in this palette, you have a very, very light one and then a dark one. So what I did was I mixed both of these together. If you grab the lighter one and you grab a little bit of the darker one, you kind of mix them together. Once you start to mix them, you can kind of create your perfect lighter brown. And when you're kind of playing with colors, I feel like usually you do mix things together. So if you want to make a brown a little lighter, if you dab into a lighter brown and blend them together, you start to create a lighter brown. I do think that those two mixed together does create a very similar tone, and on the eyes and everything, it's gonna translate the same. So that color I feel like looked pretty close. So for the next one, I jumped into this color right here. So this one right here in the center is almost like a goldy. All right, so now for this one, I ended up switching this one for the one I originally had picked for the first color, because when I was editing back, I really thought that this one looked more similar to the first color than originally I thought. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up picking up this yellowy metallic inside of the Yes Please and switching it out for this one. I feel like this way everything's making a little bit more sense to me. It might actually go a little bit more champagne than the new Too Faced one, but on the lids, don't think you'll be able to tell a difference. Then the next one, I jumped into this color right next door. So this beautiful reddish orange tone, and I feel like this one looks almost identical to the Too Faced color, at least from the swatches. If the Too Faced one is a little brighter, I think once you blend and everything, it's probably gonna end up looking similar to this tone. So far, I feel like literally like identical colors in this palette. So for the next one, this one is one that I had to mix colors because it looks similar to this tone up here. So what I did was I grabbed it, but when I put it on, I said, that's a little bit too bright. It was too bright. So I grabbed this golden color. And if you put the golden color on top and you mix them together, it starts to create a very lightish pink tone that looks so similar. So depending on how light or how much you want to get closer to this tone, you just add a little bit more gold into this color and it gets a little bit more of like a light pinky effect, and it looks very similar to this tone. All right, so I actually forgot to do the yellow, and what I did was I grabbed the yellow inside of the Yes Please, and this color is like definitely almost like identical. They're both mattes. They look almost identical. So that's the color I ended up going with. I do think that these are going to be very similar, and it's, you know, it's funny. Both of them have the pop of yellow and it kind of goes really good with the theme. So yeah, perfect color. Now the next color is the only one that in reality, they do not have it in the ColourPop version. It looks similar to this color, right? But this one's just a little bit too burnt, and I feel like the new Too Faced one is really gonna be a stronger burnt orange. But if you add a little bit of red to it, you start to turn it into a deeper orange. So you can play with those two tones. I was able to come up with something that's close. However, I think that this tone is the one that I could say that in this palette you really don't have. You can get pretty close, but you don't have like that spot on color. You can jump into the Sunrise, and I do think you could find it in the Sunrise because there is a color in Sunrise that I think is almost identical, but for the most part that's the only color you're lacking. Finally, the last color, I just jumped into this color right here. This is a very pretty deep brown that almost goes a little, like it has a little bit of like red undertone to it. it reminds me almost the same of this color story. So like literally guys, when I saw this color story, I thought of this palette. Like it just went woof, this palette came to mind. I feel like 100% I have this color story and I really love this formula. Okay guys, so now moving on to the last one. So the last one is called Let's Play. So for this one, I really used 3 palettes. Technically I used 2, but I had to jump into 1-for-1 color. So I did use the Ace Butte palette. I also used the New Nude from Huda Beauty, and I jumped into 1 color from Soft Glam. So let me go ahead and show you guys the results of this one. I do think at the end I was able to find this one, but this one to me was probably the most difficult one to find out of every single one of the palettes that I showed you guys. So for the first color, what I did was I jumped into the Ace Butte palette and I jumped into this color called Aruba. This is the closest I can get to it. I feel like other palettes probably have similar tones, but this was just a really pretty metallic tone that looked kind of similar to what I saw going on in the new Too Faced palette. Very, very nice color, really, really pretty. I like it. So for the next one, what I did was I jumped into Huda Beauty and I jumped into the color called Charmed. So this color right down here. When you swatch this one, oh my goodness, this one looks so similar to me. Now this one, it just depends on how the light hits it, whether it looks closer to the color or not. Almost like pinkish, brownish tone to it, and it looked very similar to the Too Faced one. Now the Too Faced one might actually have more pink in it, but I don't know, it looks similar, so that's what I went with. So for the next one, I jumped right back into the Ace Butte palette, and I jumped into this color right up here called Sunset Rose. I feel like this palette right here has a very, very similar idea, and Sunset Rose to me is like almost the same exact color. It's like a very light, in between an orange and a brown, very pretty tone. I actually like it a lot. Then I jumped into Soft Glam, and I mixed these 2 colors right here. So if you mix Fairy and Glistening together, I literally think you come out with the most beautiful goldish champagne color. I really wish that ABH would come out with a version of those 2 mixed together, because I do it so often and I love it. So yeah, that's a beautiful color. The next one, I jumped right back into New Nude and jumped into the color Bear. So Bear is a very, very, very pretty color. Bear is just, you know, a basic whitish bear color, and I feel like it looks very similar to what I'm seeing in the mini coming from Too Faced. We start to see like the little bit more pinks, which I had a hard time with this. I feel like if you had the Natasha Denona release for Valentine's, you might see this a little bit better than me, but I tend to skip out on things that have like pinky fuchsia colors, so I don't have many palettes with these tones. So what I did was I jumped into Pink Moon right here, and Pink Moon gave me a very, very similar idea to this color. Like I said, I usually skip out on things that have this color, so I don't have that many like pinks. But then again, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because I just don't like to wear them, so I guess it's good that I don't. The next one, I jumped into Fantasy inside of the Huda Beauty New Nude. Now this one to me looked really, really close. It's a very pretty pink metallic, and it just has a very similar vibe. So yeah, that one I think is pretty spot on. And then finally, the last color, I jumped right back into this palette right here from Ace Butte and jumped into the color Nocturnal, which is a brown, but it has like almost like a purpley base to it. So it's in between a brown and a purple. The one in the Too Faced palette might actually be a little bit more brown than this one, but I think it's gonna have a little bit more purple base to it. So that's what I came out with. And I have to say though, overall, very, very pretty color story. It's just some of those pinks for me are like colors that I tend to not use that much. And I was kind of able to find it. So basically guys, that's all the palettes, and that's how I was able to find them in my collection. And now let's get into the point that I start to make up my mind. I'm also going to give you guys some ideas of what I'm thinking about the color stories. So for the first one, the Light My Fire. So Light My Fire, guys, I honestly think that the color story is pretty spot on perfect, because if you really think about it, the Sunset palette from Natasha Denona, huge seller. The ColourPop Yes Please, which is where I got most of the colors from, was a huge seller as well. So you know that this color story, it works well. People really love this color story. So I feel like if you don't have this type of scheme of colors and you like the Sunset from Natasha Denona, or if you like the ColourPop Yes Please, and of course you have to like Too Faced's formula, then I think that this is a no-brainer for you. Definitely going to give you more of like that real sunset look. So you're going to see a lot of reds and oranges. If you like to use yellows, this is going to be the route you would want to take. Now, I'm gonna make up my mind for myself and say I'm not gonna pick this up because honestly, guys, I tend to not go in that direction when I do eye looks, and I love this palette so much that I would continue to use this. I like Too Faced's formula, but I don't like it more than I like the ColourPop formula, so to me, it's not worth it. So Kitty's Likes to Scratch is the next one. So definitely you guys saw that the two palettes that I used to get that one are these two. I love the Soft Glam, and I do feel like it's a combination of these two. Now, I think that the color story also on this one makes a lot of sense. This is going to be for the person who likes to do more neutral eye looks, likes to add a little bit of a hint of something. I feel like this is going to be a very great everyday palette. I think some people are going to love this. I think the color story makes a lot of sense. Like I said, I love this palette so much, and I love this palette. And if you really think about it, the colors that they used out of both of these palettes are the very easy to use colors. So I think the palette itself is actually really pretty, and I like it. I think it's very gorgeous, but I'm gonna make up my mind and say I'm not picking it up because it literally is a combination of two of my favorite palettes. But like I said, two of my favorite formulas as well. I can't say I would use Too Faced over these two. I would rather combine those two. So for me, it's a no-go. Right, so that's my jam, is probably the one that I would say out of every single one is the least likely for me to have in my collection, because it is just colors that I tend to never gravitate to or use. But I was able to find them with a few different palettes. You guys saw all the ones that I pulled out, especially the Trio Chrome. I'm gonna be honest, when you swatch out this color story, this is the coolest looking one that you're like, wow, these colors look so awesome together. But just looking at it, I think to me, it's the one that makes the least sense when you're trying to create looks. Like, there's some colors that I would like to use together in this palette, then there's some colors I think I would never use together in this palette. I almost feel like this is the most aesthetically pleasing palette, but maybe the least useful one. I do think that just me having the Trio Chrome from Natasha Denona is enough for me. Like, the purples and the light pastels and those type of colors are just not colors I ever use. So I'm gonna make up my mind on this one too and just say no, I'm definitely not gonna pick it up. However, I will say that if I were to have picked up any, this would probably have been the one that would have been the most unique to my collection, at least one of the most unique, because it's something I don't typically get. So Let's Play is the one that I use these two palettes for, and it is another one that is not very common to my collection. I feel like the colorway is not something I typically go for, especially because it has more like those pinky vibes. I will say that I do feel like people are going to have these colors in their collection. I feel like if you really look, you're gonna find a lot of these pinky tones. Last year was like the year of the pinks. Like, I feel like so many pink palettes came out. So I feel like we're gonna have these. Like, I feel like you probably have this colorway. I think that the way that they arranged it was easy to use. I think the colors all make sense in this one as well. However, for me, I feel like it's gonna do very pink looking lids. And I tend to not like it when my lids go too pink. Like, it just looks like weird on me. Like, it's not a good vibe for me. I do like that they put some other like neutral tones in this palette, and honestly, when you swatch it out, the color story looks very pretty, and I think people are going to like this one as well. This is another one that in my collection would be unique, because even though I grabbed them from these two palettes, I don't really love the formula of this palette, and I do like this palette, but if I really look at it and I really think about like how many times I would use it, I don't really know if I would use this that often. So as of right now, I'm gonna make up my mind and say it's not worth it. It's really not worth it, Christina. You don't love it that much. You like it, but you don't love it. So I think that that's where I'm gonna leave it. And I'm gonna say I'm really happy that I did this Make Up Your Mind, because I really thought that these four Too Faced palettes were beautiful. I think that they are, and I think that the colorways are actually very smart. I think they did a great job in arranging the colors. The only one is that It's My Jam, the pastel-y one. That one's like, eh. So it would be a great gift to give to somebody. If you're looking for these type of colors, I think that they make a lot of sense, but I'm happy I did it for myself because I realize I really do have these and I really just don't need it. So yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it. I want to know from you guys, did you pick these up or are you considering it? If you are, which one are you considering purchasing? Leave me those comments. And of course, leave me some more Make Up Your Mind suggestions. What else do you guys want to see? Which other palettes? Start sounding off down below. Thanks so much for watching. Until the next Make Up Your Mind, I will talk with you guys later.